Hi guys, it's Sakuems here. So this video is gonna be another tutorial. So this is the how to use alcohol markers. I'm saying alcohol markers because the methods and the tips that I'm gonna share are working with any brands that you own, as long as you can have a combination of various nibs. As long as you have alcohol markers, you should be able to replicate all the things that I'm sharing. So I have a few things to discuss, and I'm gonna go straight into it because there's a lot of things to cover. So the first thing I want to talk about are the nibs and what are they, the differences they have, and so just describing the nibs of the marker. As a second step, we are going to take a look at line weight effects and texture that you can get with each and every single nib that I have. So for the brush, the bullet, and the chisel nib. Then in number 3 of this video, step number 3 will have to be explaining to you what is a blender and what you can do with it. So I have my chart right here with various things that I've tried with the blender, and I'm going to comment every single step and tell you what you can do with the blender. Then in number 4, and I guess combining with the number 5 in a way, I'm going to talk about the ink flow and the pressure control when you work with a marker. And the last thing we're going to talk about here is the actually making a demo of me coloring something, combining the technique that I will show to you previously. And to do that, I'm going to go with those shapes. So there is a cube, a sphere, and this organic bubbly shape. What I did is I colored this first line. And then I did a live demo. I recorded myself doing this, and I already did it before making the English version, but you're gonna see me doing this further in the video. But I wanted to make it separately so I can include it, the same clip, in the French and English version. But yeah, I will comment what I did here and explain to you also how to do it. And that will be it for this video. So there's a lot of things to say, and I hope you will not find this too long. I will try my best to explain just as many things as much as I can without this being like 40 minutes long. But you know me, when I want to teach something, it usually takes time. So be ready, just grab a drink or something, and let's get started. So the first thing that I want to talk about are the nibs that you can find in a marker. I have 3 kinds of nibs, and to show you that, I'm gonna get my graphite marker here because I have a combo of nibs that allows me to show you both the chisel, both the 3 kind of nibs. I can show you the combo with a broad chisel nib on one side and a fine tip on the other side. That's basically how they look, and the brush is on another marker, but that's the same color, so it's pretty easy for me to show you. And I think it's pretty simple to describe what a brush nib is. It's basically a brush and that allows you to work for like softer look, and it's really about the ink flow, and I guess it's a nice combo between the thickness of like a chisel nib and also the detail properties that you will find in a bullet nib, for example. So it's a mix between the 2 other kind of nibs. Then the fine tip is basically a bullet tip that is extremely interesting for details, and the chisel nib, which on this marker, is a thicker cut nib that you can use for coloring larger areas or making like texture if you want. You can also write with this because it has a pointy end. So those are the nibs that are available in most markers. So now I'm gonna try to tell you, I'm gonna tell you what you can do with each kind of nibs. So the first one is the brush, and that is my most used kind of nib when I'm working with markers. And it's pretty versatile because you can do different texture and ink blend, like I guess line weight. And what I like about it is that it's, like I say, very versatile, and as long as you keep working with it, you kind of find what kind of texture you can do depending on the angle of your markers, if you're working sideways or like really perpendicular to the drawing you're working on. Like if depend on the motion you apply, and I can't really tell you exactly all the options. That's why I make this little chart. But that's basically what you can achieve when you work with the brush tip. You can do this flicking motion that a lot of people are talking about when you like start at one point and you flick the marker, gradually lifting it from the paper. That is going to create this gradient effect that you can have it if you work in different position, if you really flick really fast, or if you press first and then flick it. That's just how you get those results. Here is the same thing, but I'm working sideways. Here is when I actually draw lines with this brush. Here is when I created dots, and there's just variations of what you can achieve with a brush. It's also really great because you have this, I guess, automatic line weight, because it's slimmer and thinner at the end. When you start with your marker, it's really thin, like really fine, and when you apply pressure, it's thicker. That's just that is what's amazing with a brush tip. But that's the kind of things you can achieve, the kind of texture and line weight that you can get with a brush. And you can also try to write, but I feel like it's a little bit tricky because of the softer look of a brush. It requires a lot of control, so that's really about practice. But I personally think that to write something, you should use another nib. But that's about it for like the basic options you can have with a brush. And then it's up to you. You have to practice and try something to create different texture. But that's just great if you want to create like rocks or trees or skin. It's really just about trying things. And if you want me to do an actual tutorial about a specific object or specific things like tree or rocks, just post a comment below and I do the separate video, because if I'm starting to tell you how to color each and every single thing, that's gonna be a 5-hour video. So I'm gonna just go straight into the basics, and just give you tips about using alcohol markers. And that's about it for this like brush feature. So now I'm gonna switch to the other kind of brushes. I'm gonna do it together because it's pretty simple to explain, because there are basically variations, I guess, of the actual brush nib. Because I think when I look at the brush, it's kind of like a mix between the chisel and the bullet because of the options that you have. And basically a bullet or a fine tip will be extremely interesting for detailings. It's actually thinner than a brush tip, so you can do really fine lines and like working on the grass or any like plants. You can also use it to write. It's very precise. You can make tiny dots. It's really about actually drawing with a marker, even like compared to like coloring with a marker. You can actually write and draw with the marker. Then the last nib is the chisel nib, which is the one I'm basically not using. Well, usually I don't use it. I mostly use the brush, but basically the broad or chisel nib is just a thicker version, and that allows you to create thinner details, which is what I did here, or really thick coloring if you use the nib sideways. So because a marker has this chisel nib has basically two positions in a way. If you use it like this is how you're gonna get this fine details, because I'm using the pointy side, like the slimmer side. But if I turn my marker and I use the broad side, I'm gonna get different lines. You know what I mean? So it's just about practicing with it if you want to get to know how it works. It's just about doing the things that I'm doing right now. It's just like having fun at different angle and trying to find what's the best texture you can get. But it's also great, like I said, for writing because you can have 2 lines weight in one marker. So that's pretty cool. It's also amazing for coloring larger areas because you're going to cover way more space. And it's, I guess, less sensitive to brush stroke because it's a flat nib. So you will most likely don't see any strokes as for comparing to the fine line where you can literally see every teeny tiny stroke. But that's up to you. You know, when you color with something, it depends on the texture you want to get. So that's why I feel like it's great to have the 3 options. But I feel like having at least 2 of those will be the best way to start coloring with markers. So now let's talk about the blender and what you can do with it. So I have a little chart here that I created, and I'm just had fun practicing with the colors and what blender can do. So I've used the graphite brush blender that is right here. How can I describe this? It's basically great to smooth out the colors at first if you're using it as a base, and also to create texture. So I won't comment and like do a live demo of every single options you can have with the blender. That will take forever. But I can comment a few things. So what I did right here in the first 2 sphere using like some bright colors is I started on this side, like it says blender thirst. That's because I applied a coat of the blender colorless ink all over the surface of the sphere, and then I made my gradient with my colors like I will usually do, and it gives a very soft look, but it also I guess really spreads the color easily, so it can be tricky to blend sometimes because they already are washed out, because the blending is almost like, it's kind of like adding water to paint. You know, you will lose the intensity and the opacity, but it's not that crazy, but it still has a softer look. Here is the same gradient, but I didn't use the blender. You can see that it's a little bit sharper, but not that crazy. And you can definitely get a cool gradient effect without a blender, but I know a lot of people like to start coloring on an area with a blender first because it just helps spreading the ink faster, and it's avoiding harsh contrast sometimes. But personally, I'm able to blend without a blender because I'm used to just gradually picking the colors so fast that the colors on my paper are still wet. So when I combine colors, I don't need to blend with the blender. I can blend with the colors, but that's just up to every single artist. You know, you can try it or not and see what you prefer, working with or without a blender base. But I just wanted to say the difference, and then you can just try it yourself to see if you like it. Then on this side, what I did is I used the plain coloring using a slate kind of color. It's the graphite well, I can't read the number. It's the graphite 9207, which is kind of long to say, but that is basically the green gray 7. That is kind of like a slate greenish color. And what I did here is using blenders to get effects and texturing. On this side, I feel like would be great to use as a rock texturing if you're using this to color rocks or any kind of mineral like objects like this or anything that is similar. It's amazing because what it does is when you have your plain coloring, which is this darker gray here, and I grab my blender and I come on top, creating literally dots, applying pure alcohol. I'm basically applying clear alcohol ink, and it's gonna capture the color and bring back light on your surface. It's working especially on darker color, and that is just how you're gonna create this look. You could achieve this look by mixing various grays, for example, but you will still have to blend them. Whereas when you're using a plain coloring and a blender, you don't have to blend them. You can just swirl this around and it will create a texture. So that's pretty simple, and that's way faster. And it's also the same on this side. What I did here, you can see there's like a line texture, and I didn't use two grays. I only used one plain coloring, and then I went on top of it making lines with my blender until it basically reaches this I guess lighter gray. And I really don't know how it works exactly, but I feel like it's just removing the color, and it's just nice to create texture. Like I said, it's very much easier, pretty much easier to get this translucent look that you want, because it's not perfectly like randomly like flat gray. It has texture to it. You can see the little dots, some places are a bit darker, and it just gives this almost metallic look that I really like. So it's very interesting to use if you want to create this kind of texture. Then on this, like on the second line of my attempts, what I did is a glacé. I don't think I can translate this, but basically it's a combination, a combo of 2 or 3 colors when you layer them on top, and when the color that you have below is showing through. That works a lot in watercolors, and that also works with Copic markers because they are translucent inks. And I'm basically using this technique in every single artwork that I did. And when you have the blender, it's helping you showing through the color that you put first, and you can then add more color on top. I can't really describe to you how I did this besides like just telling that it has involved 2 layers and then a blender on top. I was just playing around, but you can just practice. Just try to apply like 1 or 2 colors and then put the blender on top, see what it's doing. But yeah, and on this I tried to draw with a blender. What I did is I put a wash of a very dark color, and then I draw on top to have a design kind of like what you will get if you stamp a clear image on like white ink on top of dark base cardstock, whatever. And I did a demo right here. That's kind of failed, but you know, you see what I mean. Like I have a plain purple, and then I went on top with a blender to have this show through, and it just gives a little bit of texture. And you can, like I say, draw with a blender to get this. So that's pretty cool. And the last thing I did here is kind of like working as well some effects and softer edges. I think it's very important, especially if you don't have a lot of colors and you want to work blending towards white. If you want, let's say you have like a light blue, but it's not as light as you want it to be, and it's not really fading into the white, you can use the blender to soften all the edges around it to get this glowing effect. Here, if I didn't use the blender, it will be really harsh, but with the blender, it has smoothed out all the other edges. It's also what I did right here. I was blending 2 colors and really not, I wasn't really happy because it was too different. So I add some blender just to smoothing out a little bit, and then I went with my lighter like purple just to help blending, and it gives this weird texture. But I guess it's about practicing and having fun and like trying things, and some things will look good, some things might not look good, and then you can try to incorporate what you tried into an artwork. But that's just some basic things about the blender, you know. And I'm sure there's other options, but that's what I'm gonna cover for this video. And I hope you find this interesting. And what we're gonna do now is talking a bit more about the ink flow and the pressure control. And what I'm gonna do is basically combine this with the final stage of this video, which is combining all the techniques. And I'm gonna comment right here what I did and why ink flow and pressure control is really important. So let's try this, and I'm gonna comment this line, and then I will show you the demo like of me coloring this. So the ink flow and the pressure control, I feel like I could talk forever about this, and it's already pretty long, so I'm gonna try my best to get straight into it and explain basically what it means. The ink of an alcohol marker is translucent and is wet and is evaporating because it's alcohol based. Whenever you're applying color, and I'm gonna do a random like try something. Whenever you're applying colors, it is wet on your paper and it dries in like half a second because it's evaporating, which is what we like about markers in general, is that tendency to really be smooth of it, like it's very smooth on the surface, like the ink just flows really easily. And the way it flows is basically, how can I describe this? It's very, very easy to get ahead and messing up because there's just too much ink. I mean, like, even applying the less pressure possible, you will still have a lot of ink on your surface. So I always say to people like trying to work with markers is that it's about not being afraid to try something, and also it's hard because you can't be afraid of messing up and applying too much ink, and when you have too much ink you can't really blend it. So I guess it's about practice. Try to find a paper that allows you to apply as many ink layer as you want, which is what I like personally. And I'm using a paper, I tried so many papers. I feel like there's not a lot of paper that allows you to really apply as many layers as you want. But to really get a nice blending and a nice shading, it's all about pressure control, but it's also about layering all the colors. And there are some papers, when you apply like 3 or 5 or 4 layers and you keep adding on the same position, like the same spot, you will end up having a very glary look. And what happens when you apply too much pressure and too much ink, and you don't have that control of the ink flow, and you don't have the right paper, it ends up being something like this. And I will try to show you a close-up of the texture with a paper that isn't really cooperating with the ink flow control. You see that glare where it's very glossy right here? This is because the ink didn't go inside the paper. I think there is probably 5 layers of the same color, and you can see that it doesn't absorb the colors anymore. This is something that you have happening a lot with thinner paper, and especially glossy like layout paper. That happens all the time, and there's not that much ink, but still, because I applied too much layers, I had this very weird glossy finish. And I feel like you can take advantage of this, but I also feel like it's not good because it's the ink is sitting on top, and it's almost like has a weird texture, like a non-dry, still dry, but you know. And that's what's happening when you don't have the right paper and you apply too much ink. But yeah, that is basically a few things about ink flow. That's an entire video. I can't speak forever about this, but ink flow and pressure control will help you shading everything, because you will find that the more ink you apply, the harder you can get to blend. It's all about applying, I guess, less pressure and less ink, and then gradually add a bit more and add more and add more until you achieve something that you are happy with. Practicing will help you a lot, and just looking at tutorials and like looking at how light source is working, like how to shade basic shapes, working in black and white can help you all out. But about the tools itself, it's really about layering. Always know that every layer will show on another layer, because the ink is made like this. If you're applying a darker color on a medium color, it will show. If you're applying a lighter color on a medium color, it will blend and get this like really not muddy, but this is gonna spread and blend together. If you're applying different colors on top of each other, it's gonna blend. because the ink is based like that. It's a translucent ink, so everything will show. You will get opacity just by applying more and more layers, and to be able to do that, you have to go gradually and understand that basically the ink will be absorbed almost instantly by the paper you're using, and you just have to practice and try to work fast as you can, and practice in black and white. That could help you a lot as well. I think I talked enough about all the effects and like what you can do, what you can't do, how you can do it. What I did here is I've used the broad chisel nib to shade this part. Here I use the brush nib, and I use also the brush nib, and I'm just trying to combine various lines and shapes. I use like the broad nib, like very sharp edges. Like it's really great when you want to work on a very geometrical, like straight lines. It's nice to create this kind of flat shading with a light source on the side, you know. And what I did for the last part here, this like blobby organic shape, is using a cloud coloring. I like to call this cloud coloring because you're kind of like swirling around like this with your brush, and this is how you're gonna get this really softer look. You can do this with a bullet tip, but it's a little bit better with a brush. And so for this demo, what I'm gonna do is include the clip of me doing it at a lower speed, and put some music so you can really just like see the process, you know, like just look closely at what I'm doing. And I don't want to comment on top of it because I feel like I already talked a lot. So I'm just gonna I'm just gonna stop right here and leave you with the actual like demo of me coloring this, and I'll see you after. lot of information. I tried my best to cover all I can cover with without this being like an hour long or so. And yeah, so if you have any requests and questions, anything really you want me to focus on, making maybe like a separate tutorial about shading certain things like trees or rocks or any kind of other texture you want to have like a tutorial about, I will try to make it. So yeah, if you have any requests about coloring with markers or any other tools, and like, you know, how to color trees with colored pencils or how to color rocks with markers, post a comment below and tell me, let me know. I will try to add this to the massive list of tutorials that you have requested for. And yeah, that is pretty much it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Hope you find this interesting. And if there's anything you will, if there's anything you really didn't get, you know, you want me to try to explain a bit more, same things apply. Post a comment below and I will answer to your questions right away. And yeah, thank you so much, guys, for supporting me, and I will see you next week. Bye bye, everyone.